live. Huh? Well, hello everyone. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Beautiful day in Southeast Michigan. From church. I'm Robbie Iyer, and I'm here to talk about Ayurveda, which we will embark on. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Generally, we'll talk about what Ayurveda is, where it comes from, how it actually works to keep us healthy, the basics of the energetics of it all, because that's really what Ayurveda is. It's understanding the energy that we're all composed of and how it interacts with the environment around it. We're going to try to get down to the more interesting stuff quicker, sooner than later, which is how to eat right, what kind of rituals we should be performing according to the seasons, so we maximize our energy and go with the flow as opposed to fighting it. And then I'll touch a little bit about what Ayurveda does in terms of once we do have some energetic imbalances, how we can sort of correct that either on our own or with the help of an expert, and some advanced healing techniques. So hopefully I'm going to get through all of this without boring you too much, but I will say this. The first part is kind of theoretical and difficult to grasp for some, but I'm sure all of you are super engaged and will pick it right up and have that aha moment, right? Really quick about me, I have to read about this actually. I was born in India. My parents moved to Northern California in the mid-60s. My mom went back to India to have me, so I have this sort of DNA connection with India and all of its myriad facets. But I grew up in Northern California as an Indian kid in an American world, and so I resisted a lot of the cultural environment that my parents built for me. Although I was exposed to a very traditional Indian diet, I learned yoga from my grandpa at a pretty early age. I knew what it was to chant mantras. I knew what the Vedas were, that kind of stuff. So it sort of stuck to me, as resistant as I was. So it took me a while to sort of realize that, hey, maybe this is a pretty interesting path. I went to med school. I was determined to be a healer. I went to med school in India. Actually, I went undergraduate in San Diego. Went to India for medical college. Crazy path, but it was absolutely the right one. So it's funny because while I was in India dedicating myself to Western medicine, there was an Ayurvedic college right across the street, and very rigorous program. I mean, equally rigorous to our medical program. 5 years, intense course. It's no joke, but we sort of laughed it off and called it, oh, that's kind of ancient stuff, and look at us, we really know what's going on, obviously, and you guys are stuck in the past. But at any rate, that was my kind of educational experience. I was completely dedicated to the scientific method and double-blinded studies and all of that crazy stuff that goes with that. I did my residency. I came back home to California, did my residency in Detroit in family practice at St. John. Loved every minute of it. It was super intense. It's like, the adrenaline junkie in me just thrived on that chaos, and that's what I was doing. I went to practice, a busy family medicine practice down River, Allen Park, and in Detroit as well. And as the years went by, I started to realize that people really wanted to take charge of their own health. They really wanted an answer. They said, Doc, if you're going to write me prescriptions for pills, I really want to find another way to take care of what ails me. And I'm like, hey, well, here's a cholesterol-lowering medication, here's a blood pressure medication, here's something to help you feel better. And they come back a month later, the numbers look great, but they don't feel anything. They just are just as worn out, if not more, fatigued and ravaged by their disease than if I hadn't done anything. And so I really wanted to do something a little bit different, and what better thing to do than get back to your roots a little bit. And so I did, and in the past year, in the past couple of years, I was mulling over what to do exactly. And I ended up joining the Ayurvedic Wellness Counselor Program in Milpitas, California, the Kerala Ayurveda Academy. And that's my graduating class right there, and a bunch of really cool people who are really in tune with their energy, and it was really uplifting. So that's where I am now. This is the reason I'm here, not only because I love you guys, but because it is a graduation requirement that I do a public kind of talk. And it's part of my graduation requirement to be an AWC certified person, practitioner. So that's kind of my own personal gain from all of this. My only other experience is discussing Ayurveda is one-on-one with people, and it's amazing how people are just so into it once they hear what it is, and how they can make simple changes to their lives to make their lives just better. And that was me when I was a kid with my folks, and this is my family currently. Victoria and Alexandra, thank you so much for making this possible. That was me a few years ago when I was in the ER going nuts. All right, so what is Ayurveda? As I was saying, Ayurveda is kind of an inseparable part of the culture and daily lifestyle in traditional families in India. It is the most ancient, continuously practiced system of medicine. Literally, it means science of life. It applies to all life forms. Something interesting that I didn't know, that Ayurveda, there are Ayurvedic physicians for humans, obviously, but there are also Ayurvedic physicians for animals and plants, because it's all the same energetics. And if once you understand that, we can treat all imbalance accordingly. In fact, one of my professors, his grandfather was an Ayurvedic physician for a temple in South India, and he took care of exclusively the temple elephants when they fell ill. I'm like, that is so magical and beautiful to me. It does consider, as you probably know, it considers all levels of the individual, body, mind, and spirit, and it respects the uniqueness of the individual. The energy part, we have to understand that the human body is not a solid, stable material structure, but an ever-changing dynamic collection of energy. And we're always in communication with the larger energy of the universe and the intelligence of the universe, which we'll talk about in a second. It's based on the unification theory, where there's no us and them, we're all one, and our success is based on just the universal energy success. And most importantly, it emphasizes prevention and empowers everyone to take responsibility for their own well-being. So, a little bit about the history of Ayurveda. It comes from the Vedic text, the ancient Vedic text that I got listed here, the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Samaveda, the Atharva Veda. Ayurveda comes from Atharva Veda. These were written, it's hard to separate the history from the mythology, it's the culture is so entwined with both. But, sometime around 2000 BC, perhaps, these things were actually written down on palm leaves. Prior to that, it's believed that it was all oral tradition, and the Sanskrit language that it's written in is very poetic. It's very verse-oriented, and it has a classic cadence, and you can recognize it a mile away. So it helps the students. The oral tradition allowed for students to memorize this stuff and pass on this information to the next generation. Unfortunately, throughout the history of India, a lot of this knowledge was lost to some degree and kind of tucked away. after the Mughal invasion, you know, in the last millennia, and then of course British occupation for a couple of hundred years in the 1800s and stuff. It was definitely looked down upon as some sort of primitive form of medicine, and a lot of the knowledge was not necessarily lost but suppressed. So around 1000 BC, Ayurveda developed into about 8 different branches. It has the classic stuff that we know here in the West, internal medicine, surgery, pediatric psych, ENT, toxicology, all very well documented. Actually, I have a bag full of books if you want to take a look at them, but I've got some of the ancient texts that have been translated, and it's just fascinating to see it. But there's a couple of things here that probably don't look familiar, and that is Rasayana and Vajakarna. Vajakarna has kind of now become a popular science because that is actually it's the science of aphrodisiacs if you translate it literally, but it deals with sexual dysfunction. Infertility is included in there, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, and more interestingly, virility. And then one of the main goals of Vajakarna was to ensure the health of your progeny. How to deal with couples who want to become fertile, and how to have healthy children. And so it's all about taking care of the mom and the dad so your kids are going to be well in the future. What's even more interesting, and this is I think where you're going to get the most bang for the buck moving forward here in America, is Rasayana. It's all about anti-aging, how to reduce the stress load, the effects of stress on our bodies that we obviously experience. It's designed to deal with stress, and a lot of the herbology and techniques around it are considered adaptogenic, so they boost our immune systems, and regardless of the environment we're in, we can, you know, change and sustain. In fact, I saw a recent study, a preparation with amalaki, which is the Indian gooseberry, an amazing, amazing fruit. It's been proven to increase telomere length, and that's important in DNA synthesis and mitosis, and they studied it in relation to cancer cells, and what they're noticing is that cancer cells, because they rapidly reproduce so quickly, that their telomere length shorten and shorten, and that's the DNA sequence. This particular medication that has been used for centuries ensures that when our cells divide, that they don't divide haphazardly, but they in fact divide in a very methodical way, and have shown incredible potential for cancer prevention and treatment. So it's very exciting. Yes, please.
I'm curious, psychiatry, is there a scans report for psychiatry?
Oh my gosh, I've talked to some people about how they really need Ayurvedic practitioners in dealing with ADD is one of them, but it's tertiary. It's post-traumatic stress disorder and addiction, and it's just in its infancy.
But what's the Sanskrit word for
Oh,
that category, if they have one?
Oh gosh, yeah. Jocelyn may know the Sanskrit better than I do. I don't know, but it's definitely all in the books for sure.
They have been dealing with it for centuries.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the imbalances in our energy that cause some of those things, like depression, like anxiety, like even psychosis. But yeah, it's definitely been dealt with ad nauseum for the last 5,000 years. There's no question about that. It's not a new diagnosis for sure. I threw this slide in here more for just to talk about Sushruta real quick. He was the ancient surgeon from about 2000 BC, and I have the books that have with the language regarding his techniques in cataract surgery, transplant surgery, And this is all in ancient times, well before the Hippocratic Oath and all of that stuff. Let's see. He also documented the existence of marma points. This is, but this guy, Vasant Lad, he's an Ayurvedic physician from New Mexico. He has an amazing school, and this book about marma points, and this kind of correlates with the energy points in traditional Chinese medicine. But it's all, they're superficial nodes on our body where they're energy points that can get blocked with toxins, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And he figured out that there are these points all over the body that, when treated properly, can open up our own healing channels, and it's a very non-invasive, beautiful way to treat a variety of diseases. I think a lot of massage therapists and Ayurvedic body workers are trained in this specifically, and it's remarkable to see how it all works. Again, Ayurvedic literature, the Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, I have copies of these books that I bought. They're all translated from the ancient Sanskrit. The difficulty is Sanskrit is kind of this multi-layered poetic language, and so different people can interpret it in different ways, and so there's a lot of different schools that that kind of bicker about the specifics. But there's underlying truth to all of it, and I think we just have to open up our minds and try to understand this stuff. But like I said, describes vital energy points, deals with all 8 branches of medicine and the like. All right, so this is a slide about where it's kind of a slide about Hinduism, but I hate to call it that only because, well, it's not religious in any way. There's nothing dogmatic about it, and I think it's pretty evident that that this is how the universe was created and how we perceive it. Purusha and Prakriti are sort of the yin and yang, the male and the female energy. The Purusha is the conscious ground for creation, and it's a male energy responsible for unity in the universe. And Prakriti is the creative energy in the universe. And Mahat is the cosmic intelligence. It's our cellular intelligence. It kind of gives everything in the universe its place and its purpose, without question. So I think my main goal in this is to realize these 3 items here: the sattva, rajas, and tamas. These are the 3 states in which we all exist. Sattva is considered knowledge, clarity, purity. And I want to say, none of these are positive or negative. They just exist. So you can't say, oh yeah, I hate tamasic people, I hate rajasic people. We exist in this continuum, in this spectrum constantly, and because we're energetic beings, we're always in a state of flux. Some days we wake up, we do our morning prayers and our ritual, and we are so in tune, you can do no wrong. And that's your sattvic purity. You can see the universe for exactly what it is. But sometimes somebody cuts you off in the middle of your commute to work. You become rajasic. I get angry. Somebody, cross my ego, or I really need your drive to do certain things, and that's important, right? We need rajasic behavior to get out of bed, to get motivated in life, to do the things we need to do to take care of everyday business. We also need to be able to shut down and quiet our minds and become tamasic. We need to sleep. That's our time for regeneration. And so tamas sometimes gets a negative rap because it's considered inactivity and darkness. And if you go to the extreme, it's ignorance and apathy. But consider it all a spectrum in who we are, and that's really important to know. So under sattva, the creations are our sense organs. They're pure. Our sense organs being, of course, the ears, skin, eyes, nose, and tongue. Rajasic, we have our mind, and our mind is absolutely rajasic. we can't control our minds. We have to accept that cruel reality, that our minds are flying a mile a minute, and if somebody tells you, I meditate to control my mind, it's really, I question that somewhat. It does remove you from your mind, and you become the observer, and I think that's more consistent, but mind is, of course, in control of our emotions and ideas. The other very active part of our existence are the motor organs, vocal cords, hands, feet, urethra, and anus. These are, in Ayurveda, considered our motor organs. They're the things that make us do what we do. The tamasic components are the causal elements, sound, touch, vision, taste, and smell. And we're going to touch on this because this is really where what it's all about. The basics are the 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Yes, sir.
I thought Krishna came to teach Arjuna about getting rid of the mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He wants to get rid of the mind.
Well, the mind was in the way until he
No question.
coached him.
So that beautiful picture we always see in the Gita with Arjuna at the helm of the chariot and the 5 horses, those are the senses that we have no control over, right? Absolutely correct. Okay. So this is just a graphic depiction of our five elements. I do believe the Greeks also talked about this. This was their concept of the universe a millennia later, but ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And these are not actual elements, but they're energies when created in the proper proportions create these physical structures.
So ether, is that like the night sky? I'm trying to see.
It's space. It's the void. It's considered space. It's called akasha in the texts. So akasha, or space, ether, it's the most subtle element. It's the most difficult thing to really describe. And it is the principle of space. It's ethereal. There's no perceptible material. And we always talk about the qualities of these elements. So it is soft, clear, smooth, expanding. It's not mobile at all. It's still. So it's actually the most sattvic element of the 5. It's the least dense. It's actually the space in our bodies that allow for the elements to form. So without space, there's no air in your lungs. Without space in your intestines, there's no passage of stool and gas. Without air in your sinus cavities, there's no cerebrospinal fluid, etc., etc. So you need space to fill with the next dense material, which is air. It is responsible for the principle of movement. It causes all movement and all metabolic processes in the world and the universe. It is subtle, rough, dry, light, cold, and very mobile.
Oops, it's moving very fast.
It is. Vata's going right by. I know. Like our ideas and our mind and our thoughts, it's all driven by Vata. It's just always moving. You can't hold on to it, and you can't grab it, and you can't control it. It's responsible for all movements of your body, in the body. It's responsible for moving blood through our arteries and veins, food through our digestive tract, nerve impulses from the brain. And this is really important when we start talking to people who say, I just flight of ideas. I can't sit down and sit still. It causes an imbalance in people. It causes tremor, involuntary movements, all of that stuff. And we'll get into some of that stuff. It's rough, dry, light, cold, and mobile, as you mentioned. Oh wow, I'm sorry, I wrote crazy. All right, so next element is fire. It represents the principle of conversion. All metabolic processes need heat. Photosynthesis from the sun is the primary example. How energy is converted from heat energy and light energy to a form of energy that we can use in our bodies. It's also very important for light, and our vision is dependent on it. So there's a lot of fire in us, mostly our digestion, but also in our retinas. It's how we perceive light and color. and it's created from the heat of friction created by the movement. So that's the next more dense element. The fourth element on our list is water. It is the principle of liquidity and cohesion. It's actually responsible for the sense of taste. So when you have a dry mouth, you're not salivating. People come into the office saying, "I can't taste my food." It's probably because they have a dry mouth for some reason. Do you have Sjogren's disease? What's going on with your salivary glands? Let's figure this out. So liquid is definitely, or water rather, creates a sense of taste. It's wet, heavy, dull, soft, and mobile. Its function is primarily to nourish and protect. So like cerebrospinal fluid, for example, is cushioning. Joint fluid cushions our joints. These are all fluid. That blood transports nutrition. These are this is what water is useful for. Like I always think, adding water to dry dirt, it makes it mud. It makes it sticky. Cohesion. Think of it in that regard. And we'll get into more of the interesting psychological stuff, which really fascinates me, how these elements work and affect us. Prithvi is the last one, and that's earth. It's the principle of form and structure, and it's responsible for the sense of smell. It's gross, we can handle it. It's heavy, static, doesn't change much, hard and dense. So it governs the shape and structure of everything we see in the body, and it's responsible for the composition of bone, muscle, our organs, and it's composed of all the previous four elements.
From a theoretical standpoint, diabetes, which one would be missing?
I'm going to have to ask the expert. The diabetes is an imbalance. It's a thought. I'm not positive. I'd have to. We might be able to figure it out though in a minute. Together we'll figure this out. Because it's really quite intuitive once you understand what these elements are doing and how they interact with our bodies. So now let's get into the tridoshic theory of Ayurveda. And you've probably heard these terms ad nauseum, and you're going to hear them again during this talk: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So these are the components that they're made of. Vata is made out of ether and air. Pitta is made out of water and fire, and Kapha is made out of earth and water. Basically, the five elements condense to these three forces. They're not actually substances. Again, they're energetic forces that are constantly changing to form who we are. Dosha actually means literally in Sanskrit that which is unbalanced. So to think that anything is absolutely in our bodies is absolutely stationary and unchanging is just flat out false. Everything is changing constantly, and we have to understand where those imbalances are occurring and why, and be able to counterbalance those things. They're omnipresent energies, and again, literally that which goes out of balance.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So you said Vata has ether and air.
Ether and air.
And Pitta has fire and water.
Correct.
And Kapha has earth and water.
Earth and water.
Got
Yep,
it. Okay.
that's it.
Okay.
Just two components to each of those
Okay.
doshas. And obviously this is the foundation on which Ayurveda is based on. So we're going to be talking about Vata, Pitta, Kapha. It'll be part of our nomenclature moving forward. So Vata, again, composition, air and ether. This is what gives the energy of dynamism and movement in our bodies. It is considered the king of doshas because without Vata, there's no movement of anything. It moves our thoughts through our mind. It moves our emotions to our heart. It moves blood from our hearts to our extremities. It's absolutely vital that we keep a nice, healthy, balanced Vata when and we'll talk about in aggravated states what it can do and all of this stuff. Mainly located in the abdominal cavity and the pelvis, because digestion is so important. It moves our nutritional process, our digestive process. Obviously, lungs have a lot of movement, and so our brains do. I mean, all of our tissues have all of these elements, but these are the primary locations.
Is this why most Indian food is warmly spiced
Absolutely.
and served warmly?
Yes,
Okay, all
it's
right.
a huge.
So it's not only in the body; it's you want to ingest it as well. And
Mhm.
okay.
It's a big part because you also don't want to tax your digestive process. You want to add heat. You want to do most of the cooking outside, so most of the digestion is already done.
Yes.
But yes, most Indian spices, cumin, ginger, and all of it are vata balancing. They actually suppress vata a little bit to calm everything down. And so that is definitely the principle, yes. Its actions and functions, again, it's responsible for all the movements of the body, in the body, and the mind. It propagates sensory and motor nerve impulses, breathing, speech, pumping of the heart, removal of waste, delivery of fetus. And in the mind, it promotes creativity, flexibility. It allows your mind to be agile. And people who don't have a healthy vata, or rather don't cultivate that, tend not to be able to handle changes as well because their vata is somewhat impaired, at least at that level. And that's the explanation in Ayurveda. Vata aggravation is our next slide. Interestingly enough, all these energies here are changed with the environment we're in. So in cold weather, especially, our vata gets aggravated. We start shivering in the cold. That's an involuntary movement. That's because of vata. That's vata influence. Foods that we eat can definitely aggravate our vata. Too much dry, bitter, and astringent. And we'll get into the 6 tastes, which are very important in Ayurvedic nutrition. Will aggravate your vata. Exposure to cold and wind, an erratic work life or schedule, waking up at 6 one day and 12 the next day, and having no routine, that will aggravate your vata. It'll make you imbalanced and can make your thinking imbalanced, and all your other metabolic processes as well. Excessive activity and lack of sleep also will go right into that. The signs and symptoms of vata aggravation: dryness of the skin, constant coldness of extremities, anxiety, and involuntary movements. And we touched on that. Pitta is our next dosha, and it is composed of fire and water. It produces heat and gives light. It's vital to all metabolic systems. It is primarily located in the gut, and it's responsible for the acidic nature of our gastric juices, which we need to cultivate, because I probably touched this a few times, but it's never too soon to say it. I mean, what are we reading nowadays about gut health being the source of all of our disease processes, at least our chronic diseases and our autoimmune diseases? It's all about keeping a good pitta balance, and we'll get into Agni too really quickly. That's a fascinating concept all in itself. But they're talking about leaky gut syndrome and all of this stuff and accumulation of toxins, and Ayurveda explained this stuff thousands of years ago. And I'm not here to convince you one way or the other, but it just makes sense. It's what gives our blood its red color. It's what gives our skin the luster and the warmth. Again, eyes, it helps us see, differentiate, not only physically but mentally, to distinguish real from illusion. It's also in the liver, spleen, and pancreas. Its actions and functions, again, crucial for digestion, maintains homeostasis, meaning our temperature regulation, and it sharpens our higher functions. So yes, it helps us discriminate, our discrimination, intelligence. Actually, people with strong pitta, who are pitta-oriented, are leaders. They're decision makers. They're definitive, and pitta helps them do that. But also on the flip side, and we'll talk about some of the pitfalls that pitta guys fall into. Let's see.
So if someone has strong pitta that is too strong, meaning that they're not balanced, meaning that they weren't born that way.
Yeah,
but they weren't born to that.
To that extent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this able to be modified by food?
Absolutely.
Okay, and environment, probably all of it, yeah.
And
okay.
we're gonna be hopefully
Right.
touching on some of those things, on how how we're gonna learn what our natural energy is that we were born with, and why we're imbalanced now, and why we have aches and pains, and why whatever, and how we get that back into line. Pitta aggravation. Usually in the summertime, obviously hot weather is going to make the Pitta guys uncomfortable, sweaty. Oh God, it's so hot in here. I'm one of them for sure. Sweating constantly. Always taking off my clothes. Foods that could make things worse, that people like myself need to avoid: overly salty, sweet, and pungent foods. So like spicy foods definitely aggravate Pitta. And emotional volatility is not only a cause for Pitta aggravation, but it's also a result of Pitta aggravation. Signs and symptoms are gastritis, indigestion, gassiness, and all that stuff. The other diseases that are related to Pitta aggravation are fever and inflammation. So, and also skin breakouts, red splotchy rashes for no reason. That's Pitta. And psychologically, anger, frustration, is hair trigger kind of tempers. Now, Kapha, these are the people everybody wants to be. We all want to be Kapha people. Water and earth, warm, homey, and cohesive. Again, it's the energy that helps connect or adhere. And our bodies are 2/3 of our bodies are made of Kapha energy. It's what gives us our stability. It's what gives us our bodies, our structure. So all the organs, bones and all that stuff are all Kapha. Lubrication in the joints, provides stability, counterbalances the hyperactivity of Vata. So when we have a Vata person who's hyperactive, can't get their checklist done and all over the map, it's like, oh, we need to focus on some Kapha energy on you and balance that out so we can ground you and stabilize your mind and your body. And usually it's through foods, but it's through other techniques. And it can get complicated as all get out, but in the basics we're hopefully going to talk about, and things that we can really do to help ourselves and help people we love balance out. All right. So Kapha actions and functions, we just went through this: supportive, lubrication, gives strength and stamina, and it gives love and compassion. It's the glue that holds families together. It's the glue that holds the universe together. You always will find that one Kapha person in that household that will nurture and love unconditionally. That's why we all want some Kapha in our life, for that reason alone. So it's moist, cold, heavy, nourishing, etc. Aggravation of Kapha. Usually it's this season right now. I've got a fair amount of. So I'm when I figured myself out, I think I'm primarily Kapha with Pitta, but it obviously changes a lot. So, but Kapha people are usually adversely affected during the cold and rainy months. They usually tend to become more lethargic and more grounded. They tend to gain weight. Water retention is a part of that. Allergies in this season: runny nose, itchy, watery eyes. Those are Kapha modalities that we can, if any of us suffer from those illnesses or imbalances, there's lots of ways we can counterbalance that with certain techniques, yoga, breathing, and diet. So the signs of Kapha aggravation: cold sensitivity, respiratory asthma is very much a Kapha-related asthma. So bronchiolitis, bronchitis, those are very much Kapha imbalance, cause weight gain and depression. It's very much a spectrum among our Kapha people. Now we are going to get into the most exciting stuff, or at least stuff that I really love doing. It's trying to figure out what our Prakriti is. This is our own unique constitutions. And we're talking about, and I love this slide, honey, this is so perfect. These are the 5 elements represented within our, 3 elements, within our bodies. And all of us are made out of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. At different stages in our lives, we have different combinations of this energy. And that's what makes us who we are. It's our physical appearance, it's our tendencies, behavioral tendencies, and it's our psychological makeup. So Prakriti is kind of hard to pinpoint. It is our body constitution, Vata, Pitta, Kapha profile that we were gifted at conception. In the perfect state of conception, that is our Prakriti. If we can somehow harness that and carry it with us wherever we go, we will be in perfect health, in perfect harmony with the universe, and never have a single illness or ailment. Unfortunately, doshas by nature are always changing. That is its nature, because we're either in a cold environment, a warm environment, the season changes, it's light, it's dark, day, night. So we're always fluctuating with our environments. And if we allow our imbalances to carry on for any period of time, we create what's called Vikriti, which is now our new energy balance, which isn't the same as what we were born with. And that's what manifests disease. So it's your unique psychophysical makeup in terms of your functional habits, and it's absolutely vital for diagnosis and treatment of disease in Ayurveda. It's let's see. So the one of the things that practitioners do, and it's a huge part of our practice, hopefully my practice moving forward, is analyzing people's Prakriti. And we use different tools, usually questionnaires, verbal tools, and ask a litany of questions. Some experienced practitioners can just look at you and go, oh yeah, you're Kapha with a little bit of Pitta, man, I know. Or, and it's just like amazing. It's like, yep, I can tell. Just by the way you talk, the way you move, the way you just answered my question. You were a little combative there. You've got a lot of Pitta in you, man. So it's really interesting. But as a beginner, we have questionnaires that are anywhere between 30 and 50 questions, and we ask them a lot of very, very kind of pointed and personal things about you and your life. And what we try to do, and what's difficult, is we try to focus on your early childhood, before a lot of energetics have changed, before things go out of balance. What were your tendencies as a young person prior to adolescence? Because a lot of things change around then, and we'll see that in a moment. But it determines the basic nature and tendencies and affinities of an individual. Knowing our Prakriti helps to maintain physical balance, achieve harmony at the subtle level, establish appropriate life regimens, understand disorder tendencies, suggest or prescribe proper diet and herbs as our lives go on. Interestingly, it can determine the ideal location for you to live and what kind of jobs you should have, and even what kind of life partner to choose. So it really gets into all the nooks and crannies of who we really are, and that's what makes it very subtle and powerful, because it does give you a ton of information when you're honest about answering the questions. It's a busy slide. I just want you to kind of get a gestalt of this. So this is just a tiny, small fraction of the kind of things we asked about, but physical, and I know in Western medicine we tend to get away from cubby-holing people and say, oh, you're this kind of person, but I feel the opposite is true in Ayurveda. While we may suggest that you have a VPK profile, 1 P2, K3 profile, it actually liberates you, because it just demonstrates how unique we all really are. So let's go to basic stuff. Physical stature. Vata people are usually slim and have trouble gaining weight, and you know these people. I mean, you can eat bushels and never gain weight. They can be tall or short. Their skin is usually darkish. They can handle the heat very well. They love warmth and humidity. These are those people that get cold very easily. Appetite can be variable. Sleep can often be interrupted. I just threw the dreams one in there because I think that's really cool. But their dreams tend to be more mobile and vivid. And most importantly to me in my world are the disease tendencies. And so if you figure out that somebody is actually really strongly Vata Prakriti, you want to look out for, arthritis, nervous system diseases, that kind of stuff. Pitta, these guys are medium build. I guess, you can look at me. I know I'm a little more kapha than I should be. That's the well-built, stocky guys who gain weight easily. And I know I'm out of balance there. I've never been I've never been a skinny person, but I've never been as heavy as I am now. And I've always been very medium. But Pitta people are usually very type A, very aggressive, very goal-oriented people. They sleep well. They're kind of in the middle of everything. I think it's interesting that the hobbies that Pitta people, super competitive. You ask them, what would you like to do? Would you like to go fishing? Would you like to paint? So Vata people are like, oh yeah, I wanted to travel and dance and run and paint and do all these creative things. Pitta guys are like, dude, I just want to win. I just want to kick somebody. And it's like, those are the aggressive types of personalities that you're going to see with Pitta. Kapha people are chill, do whatever. I'll go with the flow. And that's what people love Kapha people around them, because they're good followers and they don't argue very much. They just like to be part of the group, So anyway, disease tendencies though, we'll talk more about it though. Pitta guys, definitely infections, inflammation, fever. Kapha people tend to get sinus infections, respiratory illness. All right, so that's kind of how to figure out what your unique energy profile is. Usually we're not critical of ourselves enough to conduct that, and that's when we do need a practitioner to sort of weed out the truth from, because people will always say, yeah, I'm so chill, yeah, I never argue with my spouse, oh yeah, I've always been like that, and then you dig down deeper and you find out that they're those competitive people, it's like, you don't want to admit it, but so it takes a really experienced practitioner to drill down, because it's really important not to lie, not to mask, our true identities. So, Ayurvedic nutrition, super important. Now we're talking about treatment here a little bit, because food is medicine. Human life is supported by only 3 pillars. It's our ahara, which is everything we ingest, not just food and water, but our breath, our emotions, and our perceptions. So I get lectured at all the time, by my mom. It's like, hey, stop listening to heavy metal music because that's clouding your perception. Turn that music down. Drive slower. You're feeding your Pitta tendencies right now, and it's going to make you more aggressive and more agitated, more all of that stuff. So this is the most important, obviously. We all need to sleep, and we all need to perform some amount of righteous living. In the textbooks, you'll see brahmachari described in different ways. So in general, I said principled living. You're going to read it in different ways, like celibacy is considered the ultimate brahmachari. By being celibate, you are not expounding any energy through lust or wasting energy. So the highest level priests and whatever else, I guess that's their brahmachari way of living. I didn't know exactly where to put this, so I'm going to put it in here right now. It's a very crucial concept in Ayurveda. It's Agni. Literally means fire. In Hindi, Agni means fire. And it's purifying, it's digestive, it's transformational. Primarily gives us our life force, and it primarily exists in our gut. It's very important because it does exist in all our tissues, but primarily in the stomach. And when Agni is weak, that's our digestive power, it results in undigested food. And this is how we start accumulating toxins. So if your Agni is really weak, it's kind of like eating, digestion is incomplete, and so it creates what's called ama, and that's a Sanskrit word for toxins. So if the weak Agni is like a low cooking flame, it takes a long time to cook raw food. If your Agni is dialed up too high, then you're going to burn part of the pan, and part of it's not going to cook very well, and that's not a very good combination either. So that's also going to be potential for toxin accumulation. weak Agni is caused by eating excessively, eating before the previous meal is digested, drinking ice water. So there's like, in Ayurveda, you always hear this, my mom always used to yell at me, quit drinking those ice beverages, you're messing things up. And so the concept is that you're tamping down your digestive ability by adding really cold beverages. And so when you weaken your Agni, you always have this possibility of impaired digestion and accumulation of toxins. And over the years, that can cause chronic disease. So eating heavy, cold, or dry food. So, it's great. If you have a really strong, fired up Agni that's, well balanced, eating salads and stuff and slushies and smoothies, you can handle this stuff. But you know what? If you start getting a slightly weaker Agni, you might want to cook your food before you eat it, because you want to give your body a fighting chance to actually digest and get all the nutrients out of this stuff, because otherwise all that undigested food is going to turn into toxins over time. Signs of deep impaired Agni are heaviness, lethargy, mental dullness, gassy feeling, waking up with a coated tongue, excessive saliva, fatigue, and generally they say that's caused by blocked strotas, which are our microscopic energy channels that connect with marma points and all that stuff, which are really complicated and fascinating. So what happens is the toxins accumulate and block energy channels and cause stagnation and ultimately cause disease. And this is where all disease originates. Again, this is where the gut health is so critically vital to maintaining a good balance of disease-free life. So we can get rid of toxins when we do get them. The other concept, and I didn't know exactly where to put it, but it's so fascinating. I love this stuff. Ojas. This is the outward expression of our nutrition. This is the final stage, the essence of all our nutritive process that starts from plasma all the way through the blood, through the muscle, bone marrow, our reproductive system, and finally the nutrition, what's left over, becomes our ojas. And this is what creates our glow, our charisma, the reason why people want to be around you. You meet these people sometimes in your life, and you're like, what has this guy got? He's got the it factor, right? And that's ojas. That is your internal glow. It's very much involved with immunity, and so again, good nutrition trickles all the way down to even our spiritual koshas, I guess, that are layers of existence, and that's a whole other spiritual realm that is super awesome. I'd love to talk about that someday. So it resides in our heart primarily, but it's found in all our cells, and it's responsible for disease immunity. Once our ojas is depleted, we're kind of just an empty shell. We don't have that spirit anymore. Our body may not die, but we just kind of lose that spirit, that spark of life, and it's you've seen it before. The things that reduce our ojas: trauma, extreme trauma, anger, hunger, worry, grief, and excessive physical exertion.
Has there been any studies done on like Charles Manson, that whatever the people that kill people that feel nothing? To me, this seems like that. You get to that point where you're just numb, and it doesn't register.
Right.
Is that consistent with what the system is?
I'm not sure, but
it might be extreme, but
yeah, it might be. But I thought you were going to go the other direction. The reason why people are drawn to him somehow, he's got this.
I don't know about
he's
that.
got. I know, but apparently he had something that had young people just attracted to him. A spark, a light, a motivational speaker in your life, a guru. They're rich with ojas. Tejas. Yeah. So that's the other. That corresponds to pitta. This is kapha. Tejas is the other thing. The outward glow also kind of corresponds. I'm not touching on Tejas so much. But yes, Tejas is the other thing. So that's heat and pitta oriented. Yes. So let's get into nutrition a little bit more. There's in Ayurveda, we don't look at caloric intake and things like that to determine how nutritious or balanced food is. we tend to look at the 6 tastes. And they are sweet, sour, salty, pungent, astringent, and bitter. The theory is that if we incorporate all 6 tastes at any given meal, then we'll be just fine. If we eat, obviously eat a reasonable amount at the right time, but if we incorporate all 6 tastes into each meal, then we will have balanced nutrition, and if we have reasonable agni, we should never, very rarely go out of balance and be able to handle all seasonal changes and daily changes and life changes if we do this. So each of these tastes correspond to two of the elements, and it looks busy and stuff, and it's something that I still don't have memorized. But so Kapha people generally will want to avoid the top 3 because they will increase their Kapha and make them more lethargic and more sedentary, perhaps. Whereas Kapha people want to try to incorporate more pungent, spicy, astringent, and bitter foods into their diets to sort of balance their tendency for Kapha behaviors and disease. Yes?
I'm sorry, just a clarification.
Yes.
So the arrows pointing, does that mean you want more, or you need to?
Yeah, it will. So sweet and sour and salty increase Kapha.
Increase that.
Increase Kapha in all people.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's energy. Okay.
Thank you for making that clarification. You're right. So in all people, sweet, sour, and salty will increase Kapha. So these foods are great in Vata. If you're a Vata person, you want to get more sweet, sour, and salty. That will ground you better because it increases. But these same elements will decrease your Vata. So in a Kapha guy, you want it.
Here, honey, give it to me.
Thanks. Hi, Joy. Thanks for clarifying that. So these are the energies, these are the tastes, and regardless of your particular prakriti, this is what's going to happen when you consume these tastes. So pungent, spicy, obviously, going to increase pitta. Us pitta guys, we don't want as much of that. We want to kind of drop that a little bit. So we want to concentrate on bitter, astringent, and sweet. So that's kind of cool. I love dessert stuff, although it affects my kapha tendencies a little too much sometimes. And I know when that happens, when I eat sweets, I get congested, and my sinuses get worse and stuff like that. So the next slide is about the effects of the tastes and the bodies, and just a few examples for practical purposes. So as we know, sweet is more kapha-oriented, increases kapha, so it nourishes, improves circulation. It actually acts as an expectorant, mild laxative, etc. And those are examples. Honey, sweet, it's pretty common to figure that stuff out. These are the ones that we have sometimes trouble incorporating into our diets, and they're super important. These are obviously self-explanatory, but astringents and bitters, these are really good for us, for us who have kapha tendencies. They, like the bitter, you love to see this, it causes anorexia, decreases appetite, weight loss, promotes weight loss, absorbs fat, opens our channels so we can get rid of toxins, increases our sharpness, our intelligence. Green leafy vegetables, neem it's so cool to see aloe now. People are starting to understand that aloe is a really important supplement into our diets because of its bitter qualities. Astringent turmeric, of course, is awesome. It for coagulation, promotes healing, antibacterial, all those things. Very important with astringents. And so it's hard to find. What I try to do is some leafy greens at almost every meal. If I got some kale, just throw that in there. Whatever you got, greens are really crucial for that kind of balance, for kapha balance. All right, now let's get into some practical stuff outside of nutrition. This is a slide on dinacharya. It means your daily practice, your daily routine. Just like Vata, Pitta, Kapha affect our bodies and our metabolism, it also, surprise, surprise, affects the cycles of the sun and the moon. So early morning rising during Vata time is like super important. The Brahma Muhurtam, it's 48 minutes before sunrise. And right now, around Southeast Michigan, sunrise is about 6 o'clock. So that means if we can get up around 5 o'clock and do our quick ritual, brush our teeth, scrape our tongue, wash our face, and meditate for a little while. That's the perfect time that our minds are tuned to the Vata energy, and we can control that and really observe our minds from a very impartial standpoint. So first things you want to do when you get up at that time, drink 1 or 2 glasses of room temperature water. Helps with the bowel movements. One thing I have started doing recently, and it's helped me significantly with that, is storing my water in a copper vessel the night before. And apparently the experts tell me that it ionizes the water, and it creates a more, it balances our whole pH in our systems, because we have an empty stomach, and all that acid is sitting there not doing anything, and it helps counterbalance that stuff. And there is significant evidence about how, well, we do know that blood pressure rises a lot when you first wake up, and that can be dangerous for some of us, especially us Pitta guys. And copper infused water, stored water, reduces blood pressure in that early morning phase. So something to consider. It helps cleanse the body and all that stuff. It stimulates your bowels. And then you go brush your teeth, you scrape your tongue. Super important stuff. We don't learn this in doctors don't tell us to scrape our tongues in the U.S., but a lot of stuff accumulates on our tongues, and if you have a copper or stainless steel tongue scraper, get rid of that crud. You can get them at Indian stores. I'm sure you can get them on Amazon and stuff, but it just makes your mouth so much fresher and better. Again, meditation during Brahma Muhurtam, 48 minutes before sunrise. Include chanting, pranayama, breathing exercises. If you can do mantra, chant, read your spiritual books. Then as the sun rises, do your eye exercises, rotating up, down, left, right, a little yoga for the eyes. And sun gazing, one of the most amazing, simple things that we can all do is stare at the rising sun for one eye at a time, or both at a time. But I just noticed that the chakra flags are up here, and that's all about the Ajna chakra, or the pineal gland. Apparently it stimulates that third eye and gets us more in tune. Next, do some simple physical exercise, all based on what your normal, what your prakriti is. So Vata people, mild stuff, a little bit of yoga, flow Surya Namaskar, nothing aggressive. Because you always want to balance yourself, so a little bit of flow, whereas Kapha guys can do a little more aggressive. Even run and do some of that stuff if you want to. But it's funny because Ayurveda doesn't, in the text, don't talk about vigorous exercise. They do talk about athletes doing that, but our everyday people don't need to bust their rumps that hard if we're eating okay, and we're doing some basic things to keep ourselves in balance. The next thing you want to do in the morning is self-oil application, abhyanga it's called, and for each of us, again, according to your prakriti, you may get suggested a particular medicated oil to balance your natural tendencies and get them in line. And then you can massage your head, massage your feet, and then 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, take a nice warm bath. And then the aromatherapy part of it, that's kind of cool. According to your constitution, like Vata people can put like essential oils like basil, orange, clove, rose. These are kind of the calming smells. Pitta people need more cooling, so sweet aromas like sandalwood, mint, rose, and jasmine. Kapha people, stimulating aromas like juniper, ginger, eucalyptus, and clove oil. Saffron is a good one too. So that's your morning ritual. You're ready to leave the house. You basically dedicated about an hour to yourself, which is one of my take-home messages here at the end of the day. we really have to start taking care of ourselves, and maybe even before the kids get up, spend half an hour with yourself and really align your energy, your doshas. So get to work. Kapha time. It's the time to do physical labor. That's where the sun's not quite as hot. You're going out there, and in an ideal world, that's when you do your heavy lifting. You do that all morning till the sun comes up. So you're talking noonish. That's when your pitta is the highest. That's when you want to eat. I'm sorry, I didn't mention a lighter breakfast. This is when you want to eat your largest meal at around noon, between 10 and 2, but noon is great. When the sun is at its peak, that's when your digestive power is also, your Agni is also at its peak. So that's when, I hate to see it, that's your cheat time. That's when you get to eat that cheese pizza. You get that kapha stuff going, that grease, because you can digest it. And so that's going to be your heaviest meal. Coming into the afternoon, it's Vata time. And what you're going to want to do there is you want to sit down for that because your mind is Vata predominant. And you want to do your planning. You want to do your brainstorming. You want to figure out the next great business plan, right? Do your chart work. Develop your treatment plans for your patients. That's the Vata time. In an ideal world, that's what you do. Come evening time, Kapha again. Slow things down a little bit. Get home. Get cozy. Engage with your family. Feel that nurture and that warmth and that love. And really, the key is to harness the particular predominant energy at that time. You might wonder, why is Pitta happening here again? Is it because we get our cravings for our midnight snack? Yes, it is, because our Pitta is high at that time. But it's also the time when we dream, and that is really important, that we dream during Pitta time, because it is, again, transformational. We transform all the inputs of the day into real, usable input. So that's why we have to sleep deeply between 10 and 2. That's critical. Let's see, have I missed anything? So that's our daily routine. We try to stick to it as much as we can. I mean, it's real hard because there's awesome TV shows on at 10 o'clock at night, and we tend to watch Game of Thrones.
Yes. How do you work with those that have, like they work third shift?
Yeah.
Like individuals like that, they have, or, they have all these fluctuating schedules, and this is ideal, like you said.
Yeah, in the perfect world.
In the perfect world.
Mm-hmm.
So, how are they to try and live this?
If you can flip it, it works okay too. If you can flip it and get your dreaming done around here, then you'll be okay. Then you do have a truly rejuvenative sleep pattern. You get all the REM sleep you need to function. But agreed, that's going to need some extra help, and that's where one of the branches of Ayurveda is called Rasayana, which is all about adaptogenicity. There's certain herbs and techniques we can use to adapt to this day-night switch, but our bodies are really not meant for it, and it's always a challenge. But people do it, and they remain pretty darn healthy. Their metabolisms do show some semblance of balance. So that's Dina. Now we're going to go into the seasonal cycles. It's called Ritucharya, and it also, follows the Kapha, Pitta, Vata, hot, windy, dry, and then cold, wet. That's intuitive. You get it. The two main points here are your winter and summer solstice. Come winter solstice, the time between the winter and summer solstice is sun and heating. There's more sun influence, and so the principle is Pitta energy at that time. And as you can probably guess, we're definitely more active during that time. Our tissues break down to create more energy. Our appetites reduce in the summertime. So, that's because it's hot out and it's doing our digestive stuff for us. And so if we can harness that properly, it's really the way to go. Again, in the winters, between summer and winter solstice, we tend to become more sedentary, and our appetites increase because it's time for tissue building and strengthening, and rebuilding and rejuvenation. And it's more moon energy in that regard. Oh yeah, I like this. I just wanted to touch on this real quick. There's so much detail of every aspect of our lives, and one of the curious things that I read in Ashtanga Hridayam is about how often we should have sex with our partners. In the wintertime, the recommendation is have sex every day, go to town. It's exactly the right time to do this because it generates heat and all of this stuff. So it's very balancing to the external winter climates. Whereas, unfortunately, it drops off in the spring and fall, couple times a week. In the summer, maybe once a week, couple times a month. And I'm like, that's what it says. It's bizarre in some ways, and it's very cultural in a lot of ways. But I just find it that intriguing that every aspect of our lives is described in these textbooks, and supposedly if we follow them, we'll live forever. If we want to. So here's some specific recommendations for summertime. Wait, did I skip spring? Spring's important, I'm sorry. Rittucharya for spring. So this is kapha season, and so because it's heavy and wet, we have to counteract that with our diets, which should be warm, dry, and light, to counteract that type of energy. Our diet, again, warm, dry, and light to counteract kapha. We should avoid dairy and reduce sweet and salty and sour taste during this time frame because those elements increase kapha. Add more pungent and astringent and bitter tastes to reduce kapha. Ginger, calamus, clove, and cinnamon. If you can integrate ginger and cinnamon into your teas in the springtime, it's more light and energizing as opposed to wet and heavy. Avoid daytime sleep. That does aggravate kapha in all of us. Unfortunately, us nappers like that kind of stuff. But it definitely, if I nap in the springtime, I wake up congested. I mean, follow the pattern, what works best for you, but that's a general recommendation. Try and avoid daytime sleep. Interestingly, I'll just get real quick into the yoga. Stimulate energizing postures. And that kind of stuff are recommended. Cinnamon, turmeric, and ginger are your kapha-reducing teas. Dress in bright warm colors. In the summertime, we're almost heading there, and so let's start thinking about summer. It's pitta time. Diet, we should start leaning towards cool, heavy, and bland. Let's not challenge. Let's counterbalance our Agni and suppress it just a little bit so we're not hot all the time. We want to stay light and active. Avoid hot and spicy, sour. Emphasize sweet, astringent, and bitter. Drink buttermilk, lime juice, coconut water. These are all very cooling. Fragrances, again, we talked about sandalwood and rose are cooling. Short naps are appropriate at this time for vata and pitta people, but generally kapha guys should not be napping. It just makes you more sluggish all day. Pitta balancing teas include mint, spearmint, and saffron. And then in the fall, so spring is usually in North America, spring is the transition that most of us have the most trouble with, especially here in Michigan, because we have these long, cold, and wet winters into springs, and we tend to become a little more lethargic than people that live in the tropics. And so this is the kind of when we want to focus on doing some cleanses, get a really simple diet. We'll talk about khichdi cleanse and stuff, and that's basically your rice and your moong dal, lightly spiced, and that kindles your Agni, burns off some of the toxins that we've accumulated over the last few months in the cold weather. This is when I would say, hey, this is a good time to kind of maybe talk to an Ayurvedic practitioner and see, how can I get rid of some of the sluggishness so I can be ready to hit that summer, get my beach bod and all that jazz. So in the fall and winter, obviously it's vata season, so you want to concentrate on warm, moist, and heavy foods. Alternate nostril pranayama, forward and back bends in your yoga. In this time, obviously, soups and stews, gravies, thicker, warmer foods. Add heavy nuts to your diet. Butter and cheese are good during this season for most of us that aren't kapha oriented, that tend to gain weight. But generally speaking, during this time is when you get to cheat again. You get to eat some heavy, fattier foods. Butter, cheeses are good. try to avoid raw salads and things of that nature at this time, if you can. Tea with ginger is good. So, surprisingly enough, Pitta, Vata, Kapha also affects our life cycle. So our birth to puberty, we're generally Kapha oriented. We love being cuddled and warm and safe in our family's arms. But as soon as we hit puberty, bam, screw you, man, I'm going on my own. I want what's mine. And that's usually when it has to happen, right? You go to college, you get your first job, and you're on your own. And you need that Pitta focus and energy and selfishness and all of those features till you're older. And then Vata comes in and you slow down a little bit, you're a little bit more hunched over, you tend towards your creaky bones and your aches and pains. Your mind is a little, you tend to be unsure of yourself as you get older, you're not as decisive, and that's your Vata period as you get older. So it's interesting when you get to taking a history and you go, hey, kid, to any one of us, what kind of illnesses were you prone to as a child? And if somebody tells you that, oh, I suffered with asthma and horrible allergies when I was a kid during my Kapha period, it's likely that you're a Kapha Prakriti. So you're already Kapha energized. The environment is Kapha energized, and it usually happened during the spring, late winter, spring. All this Kapha energy around you, yeah, chances are you're Kapha. But if somebody tells you, so an adult comes to you and goes, yeah, I have terrible heartburn, and I'm going gray when I'm 40 years old, 30 years old. Yeah, you're probably Pitta because of all that Pitta energy that's going on. Unfortunately, Vata people tend to develop signs and symptoms of arthritis because of the excess Vata in and around us as we get older. Kapha people tend to age very gracefully. People can't guess their ages because they're Kapha by nature, but they have a lot of Vata influence in their older age. So it kind of balances that out, so they still look, generally vibrant and real healthy, which is kind of cool. I just wanted to touch on some of the interesting life stuff, like what kind of work certain prakritis are recommended. Vata people, very talkative. You get two Vata people together, and they'll be talking at each other a mile a minute, talk right past each other, and be super satisfied with the conversation. That's a classic Vata situation. They are fantastic at sales and marketing. They're great at acting and dancing. They're great teachers. They write, and they're photographers, and great designers, great imaginations. Pitta people, they're people with very few words, cut and dry. They are in management. They like to control things. They're very control-oriented and OCD. They tend to make good management CEO types, doctors, lawyers, stuff like that. Following rules, very regulation. They don't like change as much, they don't respond well to that. They get stressed out about that stuff. Kapha people, they're great administrators, they're organizers, they're good checklist keepers, they do everything very methodically, so they're good administrators, they're great nurses, the best homemakers. If your mom is Kapha, you know it. You grew up with a pantry full of food and lots of loving, and that's what makes great kids. But they're good at building trades, and they're great counselors. They're very empathetic people by nature. I got a couple more minutes. Sorry if I'm going over here, but let's talk about the concept of disease in Ayurveda really quick. Like we talked about, as soon as the minute we're born, our prakriti, our energies change because we're exposed to the cold, the light. We're screaming little babies, I hate this, and right then and there, our energy has changed, and we're fighting to get that balance back to prakriti, our original state. But sometimes we never get it, and so we just adapt and go, okay, this is just the way it is. Hey, Mom, she swaddled me and put me in a warm blanket. I feel much better. I'm much closer to my original state. Bless you. But if you're just sitting there uncared for, man, your energy changes so dramatically that it's disease is bound to hit you. So doshas can be aggravated and depleted. So your vata pitta kapha can change dramatically, just moment to moment. Just somebody saying a nasty word to you changes your energy, right? So it's that which changes constantly, and we have to be aware of that. Let's see. Cause of different. So the other really important thing when we decide, as practitioners, is finding out your prakriti, your natural state of perfection, and then you want to figure out what your state of agni is. How good is your digestive power? Because that's what determines how the toxins you're accumulating over the years. So in weak agni, it causes accumulation of ama, which is a toxin, and it usually accumulates in the weakest tissues. So you go, hey man, so I don't have any stomach aches, but I got a backache. Well, that's because the muscles in your back are weak, and that's where the toxins decide to settle down. That would explain that. So what you would want to do as a massage therapist or a herbologist is find the right combination of technique and herbs that focus on the mamsadhatu, that focus on the muscle tissue, and to get that vata, the ama out of there. Usually it's vata accumulation.
So Robbie,
yes.
Weak acne, if I said energy flow, would that be the same idea?
Weak agni?
Yeah, in your last bullet.
Yeah, weak agni is all about your gut and your digestive ability.
So what, but if mine's saying energy flow.
Uh-huh.
Or am I mistaken?
Yeah.
So if I have a weak energy flow, not balanced.
Right. What might you accumulate
I'm just trying to see if agni is the same as energy.
Agni is the transformative energy that is primarily made of pitta. Okay. It's mainly your transformative energy that's pitta energy. So it exists in all our tissues, and we definitely have agni in our brains as well. And that's usually...
So if I say weak energy flow, is that the same as weak agni?
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily.
Okay.
Does it coordinate with the chakra, or is it all the chakras?
The chakras. Yeah, I think it connects all the srotas, all the microscopic energy channels. The chakras are definitely part of that. Is the spine of our energy channels, obviously, but yeah, it exists in microscopic channels all over our bodies. So we have to find what tissues to target and where those toxins might be accumulating due to your weak agni. But regardless, if you have some pathology going on, if you know that you're not balanced in a certain organ system, there is probably little to no doubt that you're accumulating toxins in that particular organ system. And so that needs to be the target. But our focus should be on the gut agni. Should always fundamentally be there first. Because once we get our gut agni straight, everything else falls into line pretty much. And then you need some additional help to balance your specific tissue that's big. That's why that's more complex, and you definitely need a practitioner. But we can all kindle our agni by watching what we eat, when we eat it, and how much we eat of it. We can all do that at all given times, and that will reduce that possibility of toxin accumulation. Really quickly, this is a whole world. I will not claim to know too much of it, but in the Ayurvedic world, everything in this universe is medicinal. It's just up to us to figure out what it does and how it works. Every single herb has its own particular taste profile, pre-digestion, post-digestion, and some even have very unique properties that experts know all about. And some of them are so unique in that they will increase one dosha but decrease another element, and which is rare, so like very unique characteristics. I just wanted to mention a couple of things that are kind of popular that we can, obviously we want to integrate a lot of these spices in our foods because it's all medicinal, and when we use it in the right quantities at the right time, we can definitely balance our doshas out. So like turmeric, for example, it's bitter and it's pungent, which is kind of unique. Not many things have that kind of balance, and it's astringent as well, so it decreases kapha very well. It's anti-inflammatory, as we talked about. It decreases cholesterol, helps with allergies, boosts immunity. Tulsi is one of my favorites. I drink Tulsi tea during this kapha period, the spring period. It decreases the kapha. It dries you out a little bit, and it also decreases vata. We always want to decrease vata, not always, but a lot of times when we have toxin accumulation, we want to reduce the vata a little bit, because vata is the property of movement, is the energy of movement, and it is responsible for pushing toxins into our weakest parts of our body. So if we can kind of push back, balance out our vata a little bit, we usually benefit from fewer symptoms in our weakest spots. Let's see, what else?
So
Neem
what
is...
herb
so-
did you say to take for that? You said there was an herb.
Oh yeah, Tulsi.
Tulsi.
Holy basil.
Oh, holy basil.
Yeah, it's gaining popularity here in the West. The best way to ingest it, I found, is just getting the raw leaf organic from Banyan Botanicals, I think has it. They're all organic, and I'm not here to push products at all, but that's just one of the things I use, and I just make a tea in the morning and kind of sip it all day, and it helps keep my secretions down, helps me breathe better during my allergy season. But beware, it can dry you too much. It can cause diuresis, so it dries you out, so it does make you want to pee more and all of that stuff. It can make your mucous membranes dry. So, I mean, it's very biologically active, and these aren't, and so, yeah, they're herbs, yeah, they're safe, yeah, they're this and that, but yeah, they're really active, and we have to be aware of their effects on our particular constitution. So we've got to be careful with it. Aloe, I said, it's awesome because it pacifies, it's tridoshic pacifying. It pacifies all three doshas, which is kind of a unique property of it. It's good for inflammatory conditions and things like that. One of the rasayanas that I was I shouldn't probably advertise this, but one of the rasayanas, and rasayanas meaning, the science of longevity, most rasayanas are good for balancing all three doshas. So theoretically, they're good for everybody, because we can all, it's very selective, and so if we're highly vata individuals, it'll balance all three out. And so ashwagandha is actually one of them that is considered safe in all people. It's Withania somnifera, decreases vata and kapha, and to some extent pitta. It's good for insomnia and anxiety, beneficial for arthritis and respiratory complaints of cough and asthma. They generally use it, first thing in the morning. Increases mental capacity and acuity and memory, I think, is one of the things. But again, these are very biologically active herbs, and we have to be kind of really in tune with our bodies to know if they're doing the right thing or not. And always talk to an expert. Don't look at me. An Ayurvedic wellness practitioner. That's the next phase in the study. And I will definitely tell Jocelyn to throw some cards around, because we're graced by her presence today. She completed the practitioner course and is a active herbologist and body worker. So herbology is something that is in the next phase of my learning. But we can do simple things like, cumin, coriander, ginger, activate your, balance your vata out, put it in your food, create more pitta, activate your agni, increase your digestive capacity, reduce the possibility of toxin accumulation and chronic disease. And kind of last but not least is the real detoxification that Ayurveda is super famous for. It's called Panchakarma. It's a 5-step detox process. All of us have some amount of toxins that we accumulate throughout our lives, throughout the day. And Panchakarma is a complex process of detoxification. let's see, it eliminates toxins. The goal is and the other goal is to strengthen your Agni, to open energy channels and eliminate toxins. Curiously enough, the first step, before you even start the real thing, you have to prime your gut. You have to kindle your Agni so you can make it receptive to this very often rigorous process of eliminating toxins. So the initial process is very diet and herb oriented, and what it's designed to do is centralize all your toxins, bring all your ama into the gut, and that's when you can get rid of it. That's how you get rid of it, through purgation or through therapeutic enema. Svedana, which is sweat, that's your other waste elimination. There are some rare cases where they do bloodletting. These are kind of crazy, but people, they still do that with leeches for pitta conditions like really bad skin conditions with pitta imbalance, aggravation, varicose veins, and things of that nature. This is actually a technique known as Shirodhara. It's medicated oil. It penetrates your mind, and it's used primarily for psychiatric disease. And it's very, very therapeutic. The other way they administer medications is through the nose, especially for neurological disease. But the ultimate goal of Panchakarma is getting rid of toxins, and it ultimately is getting rid of them through your gut, because that's the only way you can really do it. So, and it really has to be done under the super strict guidelines and supervision. One of the things that a lot of people talk about, you get online, and I've seen that, believe it or not, I've seen an advertisement for online do-it-yourself Panchakarma at home. These are really, they're not could not be the real thing. These things have to be really strict, diet, and certain activities you have to be at peace, and you can't exercise too much during this period because it really wears you out. I mean, it really can make you really different because we get used to our toxins. So I'm near the end of my talk. I know it's been a long one. My key takeaways, though, understand your unique energy state. Talk to a practitioner about what your prakriti might be, so you can at least understand what diseases you might be prone to, even if you feel perfectly well. Because what's interesting about Ayurveda is when you read expert clinicians can, like when you read about diabetes, for example, there are 20 stages of clinical diabetes. The last clinical stage of diabetes is actually when your blood sugar goes up and you can test it in your blood. The 19 other ones, practitioners can actually diagnose through subtle changes in your energy, primarily through pulse reading. I mean, it's one of the major tools, but through many other clinical techniques which require years of study. But try to figure out your own energy state. You can do there's online quizzes and stuff like that too, which are tend to be I forget what that website is, but with all these funny quizzes that figure out what your prakriti is. I don't know. They might work. They might not. But talking to an expert is definitely good. Once you do that, you can determine what food works best for you. So, hey, I'm a kapha guy. I'm going to really avoid a lot of heavy, cheesy, fatty foods during the kapha season. I know that's going to make me sluggish and create weight gain, and it's going to screw me up. Or I'm a pitta guy. I'm going to avoid really spicy foods in the summertime because it's going to just heat me up beyond belief, and I really don't want to sweat at my brother's wedding all that much. Follow a daily ritual to optimize your metabolic performance. We talked about that. So pick your time of day, pick your battles, cheat during your pitta times if you really need to eat that pizza, really want it, and we all want it. I mean, I'm rajasic to the core. I have cravings, and we all do. Don't deny yourself. Just be smart about it. Pay attention to the seasons, make your changes accordingly, listen to your body, and see if Ayurvedic practitioner early if you sense an imbalance. And I always tell people, try to carve out 30 minutes of quiet time early in the morning for yourself. It's really, because, I truly believe this is, if you're out of balance and not feeling right, you're not as effective to help the people around you. And it's not selfish to want that. Take that time out, quiet time, and take care of yourself, and then take care of everyone else. So, conclusion, I didn't want to do a lot of Sanskrit, and I don't claim to know Sanskrit, and my pronunciation is bad, but I love to chant. But this is just in Ashtanga.
Probably go back a slide. Go back a slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, Samadosha, Samagnisha, Samadhatu, Malakriya, Prasanna Atma, Indra Manaha, Swasta iti abhiyate. And that means health is the state of complete harmony and balance of the doshas. Balance of the doshas, digestive metabolic fire, which is Agni, and tissues, and elimination of waste, with a pleasant and vibrant soul, mind, and senses. So that's kind of, we want to be healthy and be in balance with our universe. Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions, if I can answer some. Or I'll direct them, actually. To Jocelyn.
Someone asked about diabetes. So he covered, I know, like the taste. So diabetes. Did you ask about that?
Yeah.